saying now that, whereas there would have been opposition to the Montenegrin flag flying on public buildings there, now this seems to be something that can be done without drama, that children in schools are happy on occasions to sing the Montenegrin national anthem. So that my feeling is that this issue is being diminished finally after such a long period of it being the political issue in Montenegro to the exclusion of all others. It may be helped by the fact that Montenegro now has a new prime minister unconnected to the past conflicts of the war period. It's true, of course, that Luksic remains closely surrounded by Djukanovic's allies, a fact that's certainly likely to restrict his room for manoeuvre. So we still have continuity in Milan Rocen as foreign minister, and Dushko Markovic as in charge of dealing with Home Ministry and security. But Luksic is not exactly a cipher, and he's already demonstrated a new openness in meeting people from the NGOs, trade unions, the media. And he's recently, I read the other day, decided to have all the government cabinet meetings and audio recordings made available directly through the government website. And this is suggestive of a certain kind of openness, which is refreshing, even if it is decidedly, I think it is decidedly premature to start discounting the power of the DPS monolith. Montenegro having the unenviable record of being the only former part of Yugoslavia which has been continually ruled by one party since so-called transition. So just to sum up, where does this leave the identity question in Montenegro? Well, identities, as I said at the beginning of this, are not set in stone. As Montenegro draws closer to the EU and as civil society grows stronger, we may, I think, see Montenegro edging more towards shared values, not just between those who call themselves Serbs and Montenegrins, but between the Orthodox majority in Montenegro and the various minorities, Albanians, Bosniaks, Roma and Croats. And so while it is right to be cautious about foreseeing the healing of this centuries-old fault line, there are signs of hope and signs that some young Montenegrins are seeking to recast themselves as Europeans and as Democrats, rather than as Serbs and Montenegrins. So there are signs of a welcome, I would say, ability to have an overlapping and plural sense of identity, rather than one that is torn by fundamental ambivalence and allows its manipulation, depending on the way it's seen by political elite, the way historical facts mold it to push them to one side or another. For now, these young people are seeing themselves as European Democrats, perhaps in a minority, but I think they certainly represent the best chance of Montenegro transcending this past and breaking out of this ultimately sterile and distracting and increasingly irrelevant debate on Montenegrin identity.
Thank you.
So I'm sorry if I've galloped through Montenegrin history at enormous speed.
Thank you very much indeed. I found that absolutely fascinating. I know that when we talk about questions of identity, that people here are often relating these issues to Kosovo. The international community appears to expect that Kosovars will eventually feel comfortable with a kind of dual identity of being both Kosovar and Albanian or Kosovar and Serbian. But coming as we do from melting pot Anglophone societies, we may be comfortable with multiple identities, but clearly people in this region have not been historically. They've had to choose either or rather than both. Can I ask you, can I use my prerogative and ask you a first question, which sort of relates to that? I don't know to the extent to which you've been able to study the Albanian minority in Montenegro, and do you have a sense to which a sense of their loyalty to the new state of Montenegro?
I haven't. I have to begin by saying I haven't. I would love to study the Albanian minority much more in Montenegro. It's something I would like to know much more about. I don't speak Albanian, unfortunately. They have played a part. I mean, one of the statesmanlike and very intelligent things that Djukanovic did in breaking from Milosevic was to consciously woo the minorities in Montenegro. and to stress very much Montenegro in contrast to Serbia as a multi-ethnic state. And this, I think, paid great dividends, so that Montenegrin parties have been members of the Skupština, members of the Assembly. We've had consistently 2 Montenegrin parties being represented in the Assembly. Now three parties. Yes, I mean, I think the Albanians have generally, certainly for very obvious reasons, supported the project of the independent state. So did the Bosniaks, and that was an interesting issue because, of course, Sandžak being, Bosniaks existing on both sides of the Sandžak border, there was obviously a strong pressure for Bosniaks in Serbia to wish to see, not to wish to see independence because they wanted to keep Sandžak as a unit and to build up Sandžak's own autonomy. But again, despite this, although there were some prominent dissenters, Nahron Hadžić, for example, who didn't take this position, but by and large, both Bosniaks and Albanians responded to these overtures and so generally cooperated. Now, of course, there have been, as we know, areas of tension, again, between the Montenegrin government and Albanians, most specifically over the status of the Malaysia, of the area around Podgorica, centered in Tuzi, where there's been a strong Albanian push to have that recognized as a separate municipality. That hasn't happened. So that there are areas of friction, but overall I would say that relations were quite good, and I think, you know, there are very obvious reasons for this. As I was talking about with someone this morning, that, you know, there are enormous areas of cultural overlap, and this is one of the things that makes the question of Montenegrin identity so ambiguous, because the Montenegrins and Albanians share enormous numbers of common facts in terms of the organization of their society. I hope I'm not, as I say, I don't know much about Albanian society, so I may be, you know, generalizing wrongly, and I'm sure people will correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that there are many common features, patriarchal values, clans, organizations, names that have been either Albanianized or Slavicized, where you have people across the borders. So, although there have been areas of tension focusing on these sort of political issues and on language issues, by and large, I think, certainly the project of independence has made things much happier. And of course, the recognition of Kosovo relatively soon against the wishes of Belgrade was a positive step.
We have time for a couple of questions.
I have a question regarding to the identity issues. According to the Serbian historians, mainly politicians and whole Orthodox Church, Montenegrin people are Serbs.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
So, but regarding the last census, in Montenegro lives, you said, 42%
Yes,
Montenegrin, 32 Serbs. So what happened historically of these people? They identified them as Serbs and Montenegrins. Having in mind that Mark Milan, he says that Montenegrin people are more closer to the Albanians than to Serbs.
Yes, you're absolutely right about I mean, in fact, one of the strongest voices in favor, as again I'm sure you know, in the favor of Montenegrins as being quintessential Serbs, and you know, the sort of center of Serbdom has been the Orthodox Church, and a very prominent role taken by the Metropolitan Amphilochia in this. But you know, the argument has so many permutations, this argument. So you get on the extremes, the sort of people who want to show the ethnogeneous of Montenegrins as being totally divorced from Serbia,